Hey there, emotional explorers. It's LaTondra here, your guide on this wild and wonderful expedition we call life. Welcome to another thrilling episode of the Emotional Freedom Express, brought to you by mixedgreensforthesoul.com. At the Emotional Freedom Express, we're upgrading your emotional toolkit for the adventure of a lifetime. Today, we're venturing into the uncharted territory of our inner voices. You know, those chatty companions in our heads that sometimes sound like a mix between a drill sergeant and a drama queen with a megaphone? Yeah, those. We're going to learn how to turn them from unruly wilderness creatures into well-trained adventure buddies. All right, strap on your emotional hiking boots and let's get ready to trek. Now, before we set off, let's check our map. We've got 3 major landmarks to hit on this journey. We're going to hit the sticky swamp of negative thinking, the mountain of emotional baggage, and the Grand Canyon of boundaries. And guess what, guys? We have a guest expert today. We're going to hear some quotes and information from her. Her name is Sandra Kushnir. She's in the Los Angeles, California area, a wonderful licensed therapist and owner of the Meridian Counseling Group. All right, guys. So again, we're hitting that sticky swamp of negative thinking, the mountain of emotional baggage, and the Grand Canyon of boundaries. Are you ready? All right, let's go. So we're talking about the sticky swamp of negative thinking. Our minds actually have the ability to make negative experiences stick like Velcro while acting like Teflon for the positive ones, right? It's kind of weird, but in other words, it's easy for most people to gloss over the good experiences in life while stubbornly holding on to the bad. So what do we do to combat that negative thinking? One of the quick strategies that we have over at Mixed Greens for the Soul is something called a quick brain makeover. Now, be clear, this is not toxic positivity by any stretch of the imagination. I definitely don't want anybody walking and talking rainbows and sunshine all the time. But instead, I do want you to cultivate a balanced emotional ecosystem where the positive thoughts have as much sticking power as the negative ones. That's fair, right? Ooh, we made it through the swamp. Take a breather, let's hydrate, and let's move on to the next challenge. Now, that next challenge is the mountain of emotional baggage. We all carry emotional baggage on this journey that we call life. Now, the kicker is some of us carry sleek carry-on packages that fit just very, very neatly in the overhead compartment, while other of us are lugging around garbage bags and totes full of emotional baggage. It's the stuff that makes reality TV stars blush. So let's talk about what it means to unpack that baggage, like really diving into and sorting through the things that, keep us held back. I want to bring in our emotional wrangling expert. Her name is Sandra Kushnir. I mentioned her at the beginning of the podcast, and she is a licensed therapist at Meridian Counseling in Los Angeles. She's actually the founder and, again, a licensed therapist over there at Meridian. So we thank her for her quotes and her thoughts on this important topic. She has something to say, quote unquote, our inner voices often stem from childhood experiences, creating blueprints that shape how we experience ourselves, others, and the world around us. These early experiences lay the foundation for our self-perception and influence our emotional responses, relationships, and worldview. Oh, this is getting deep, guys. Sandra says that it's crucial to dive into these blueprints and understand how they manifest in our daily lives. So again, that's a short quote from Sandra Kushnir, licensed therapist, but it is impactful, right? She says that those inner voices that we have in our childhood, they actually create the blueprints and the foundations for our life experience, right? Our life experience, how we relate to and interact with others, and even impacts our world view. So again, unpacking that emotional baggage is key. All right, trekkers. So we're almost at the peak of the mountain. We just have a little bit further to go. And the last thing I want to talk about today in this podcast is something called the Grand Canyon of boundaries. Now, in all seriousness, setting boundaries is like deciding who's on the VIP list of our lives, right? Setting boundaries is healthy. It's an act of self-respect, in my opinion. It's about recognizing our worth and honoring our own needs. When we establish clear boundaries, we create space for healthier relationships and a stronger sense of self. Now, again, those are my own professional and personal opinions, but let's go over to our resident expert again. We're going to look at some of the things that Sandra Kushnir has to say about setting boundaries. She says, quote unquote, when you set boundaries, you communicate to yourself and others what is acceptable and what is not, creating a healthier dynamic in relationships. She goes on to say this process involves recognizing your limits and giving yourself permission to prioritize your own needs without guilt or fear. So good advice from our Sandra Kushnir over in Los Angeles at Meridian Counseling. The last thing she says that I think is very important, she says, honoring your needs means acknowledging your right to take up space, to say no, and to protect your energy. Great final notes, I think, guys. So as we wrap up today's podcast, no matter if you're listening in the daytime or in the evening, I want you to remember the three things that we talked about today. We talked about navigating the sticky swamps of negative thinking. We talked about how to get over those mountains of emotional baggage. And finally, how to navigate your way through the Grand Canyon, if you will, of boundaries. I hope that the tools we provided for you today, training your brain to remember as many good things as bad, learning to unpack that emotional baggage, and creating boundaries. I hope those tools are something that you can carry as you continue on your journey to emotional freedom. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this content, head on over to mixedgreensforthesoul.com for more. And don't forget, for the next few Mondays at 10 a.m., you're going to get these sort of podcasts. So pass the word on to your friends, family, whoever needs this information. We are here to help. And again, we look forward to hearing from you guys, to speaking to you guys as you guys send us emails, so on and so forth, over at mixedgreensforthesoul.com.